Hey, what up? Today I'm here to talk to you guys about something that I'm trying to actually create. I'm making an RPG, a tabletop RPG. What I'm deciding to do is I'm trying to make a role-playing game that is not so much like D&D. Not that there's anything wrong with D&D, I love D&D, but every single tabletop RPG that comes out, especially fantasy-wise, seems to go the diet D&D route. But this first video is going to be my inspirations for making the RPG and what I would want it to be core mechanic-wise. So I'm going to get into showing you a couple of the RPGs that I personally own and that I'm going to be taking some inspiration from. So the first one up is the Age system. There's a couple games linked to it: Blue Rose, Fantasy Age, Dragon Age. They're all pretty cool. My favorite one so far is Dragon Age. The one I'm going to show you, though, is going to be Fantasy Age, just because this game was made without another game in mind. It was kind of its own thing. This is the Fantasy Age basic rulebook. Art's pretty cool. It's not the most detailed thing in the world, in my opinion, but I actually kind of like that about it. I mean, of course, the cover here is pretty detailed. Once you get into the book, you'll see, like, big World of Warcraft orcs and stuff. This game uses 3d6. It uses more dice. In my opinion, it's more fun to roll. And if you roll doubles, you get to do something called a stunt, and I think that's pretty cool. Some people think it bogs the game down a little bit. I don't really think so. One of the cool things about it is you roll doubles, you get to do a stunt, and that's determined by your third die, which is supposed to be a different color than the rest of them. And you'll get to pick a stunt from a list. Aside from that, the rules itself are actually very simple. They've kind of taken D&D and they make it more of a simpler game to play. You roll your dice, your 3d6, you've got skills, you've got attributes. These attributes don't add up to like into the 20s to give you your modifier. Whatever that smaller number is that you're rolling for is actually going to be the number that you use to add to whatever your rolls are, which I really like about it, because I've always thought that using two different numbers and having a modifier, to me personally, was a little confusing, but I'm big, dumb, stupid, don't know math. So another thing that I liked was they have, in the basic rulebook kind of, but they do expand on it in a companion, sort of a wide array of races to pick from, and I've always liked that in RPGs. I don't like really being limited on what I can play. When you go into the races and the classes, the one thing that's kind of crunched down a little bit, or dumbed down if you would, is the class system, but they expand on that later on as you go into your levels a little bit more. You only get 3 classes: Warrior, Mage, Rogue. And those are pretty basic. That's pretty much what anybody is in any game. But when you reach a higher level, you get to pick something called a specialization. And a specialization is kind of a more technical term for whatever it is that your character is based on their class and whatever specialization they chose. Where this would differ in a lot of other RPGs is where you would kind of have your class specialization picked at level 1, and it wouldn't really branch off into anything really unique until you were off, out in later levels. But with that being said, I love the game. I love the rules. One thing I don't like in particular about this game, which is it's a minor gripe, between this game and Dragon Age, there's 8 attributes, I believe, in Dragon Age and 9 in this one of them being fighting. Doesn't seem like that really has more of a place in this game than it would in Dragon Age. I think that's something that could be taken out. But, this has to be a different game than what they put out in Dragon Age, and I respect that. I think they did a good job with it. With that being said, and those mechanics and rules that kind of inspired me as to what I'm going to do with my core rules, we'll move on. Another big inspiration for me was this game. And that's kind of weird for me to say because I haven't actually had a whole lot of successful sessions with this game. It's like the German version of D&D, in my opinion, except if you took 5th edition and did a bunch of work to it and made it very confusing in some places. But the things that I want to pull from it are the kind of the level-less system that they have. They give you points in a system that you would spend on things like raising your attributes, raising skill levels, getting spells, new maneuvers, all types of things. But anything that you can do to progress your character, they provide that in a way in which you can progress those things without having to reach a new level. And I think their rule of thumb is once per session you can go in and tweak your character a little bit, and that's how you would actually go about progressing with those points. But their system for races is something that I find a little lackluster for what I like. I don't think it's bad. I just think that for my taste, it's, like I said, it's a little lacking. They have humans, elves, dwarves, and half-elves. One thing that they do very well is backgrounds. They have a very wide list of backgrounds. When it comes to classes, they have a large list in their core rulebook and another large list in some supplementary content that they put out. Now, these classes aren't necessarily something that your character is set for. It's like a starting point for your character. You pick a class, and it's going to have points all set up for your character on how their skills and their attributes and, everything is going to go for them at that point. And it makes it easier for you to know how your points are going to be allocated, because realistically, you can take those points that you have and you can just, take 3 hours and fudge it all into a totally new character and class that hasn't been created before, which is something I like about the game. And I'll definitely be pulling inspiration from that for what I'm trying to make. Another thing I pull inspiration from, I think, would be artwork, which is something I don't really necessarily know how I'm going to get done yet, but it is something to think of down the road. Between the two things that I've seen in these systems, the art, the realism, and the simplicity, I think, is really cool. And when you can split the gap between those two things, I think you can make something work pretty well. So with the Dark Eye, their art style seems to be, let's try to make this as realistic as we can. Make the pages look beautiful. It's going to be fantasy, but you got to be able to believe it when you see it. And Fantasy Age, they went for an art style that was just make it look good. And I like that. I don't think things have to be too complicated with your artwork, but I do appreciate a little bit of the realism that they do put in certain areas. But then, of course, there's core mechanics that have to be mine and my own, which that's where it gets tricky. One of the things I definitely want to implement is a system of dice that's not commonly used to my knowledge. The system I wanted to start with was 5d4s, and anybody who hears me say that, I feel like is going to look at me and be like, whoa, why would you do that? In my head, I was thinking, the max number adds up to 20. That's that's kind of where people sit in most RPGs. Fantasy Age being 18, D&D being 20, this game being a D20 system for the Dark Eye. Then I thought, I keep rolling these dice, and I keep rolling like 12s every single time. How am I going to fix this? I took the double system that Fantasy Age had, where you get to do stunts, and I said, I don't want to implement a stunt system because I do still want my game to be somewhat streamlined. I want it to go quickly. If there's any stunts or maneuvers you can do, I'm going to add that as a separate thing for the class that your character has. So I'm going to take the 5d4s I have and give you a +1 to the doubles and things that you can get. Because you have 5 d4s. The highest you can roll on any of them is a 4, and you have 5 of them, so you're going to get at least one double. With every double that you get, you'll get a +1 bonus, and it'll make your score higher. And then I thought, but it's still going to be sort of average, so I came up with another system. I also like that the Dark Eye, you roll against an enemy who's attacking you. And when an enemy is attacking you, what you would roll with is to dodge or to parry. And I don't want it to be that complicated, so I just made it an agility score. The agility score is a lot lower than a score you would use to give yourself buffs to attack, so it would make it fair. So I implemented that, and I still didn't like how it was going. As I'm going into it, I'm noticing, I think the problem here might actually be how many dice I'm using. 5d4s does seem like a bit much. It's really fun to throw out of your hands, but the way the numbers come out, it doesn't feel satisfying once you hear what your end result is. So I decided the number's got to be a little more volatile. If I make it 4d4s, I don't know if that's volatile enough. I'm only taking away one die. If I make it 3d4s, that's going to make it a little weird, because the highest score you can get on a d4 is 4. There's only 3 dice. The chance for doubles is a lot lower. And the numbers on the dice are probably going to be kind of more all over the place than they would have been with 5d4s. The only thing is, your max number is going to be lower than if you had 5. That's not necessarily a problem in my case, since I'm doing agility-based defense. You're not trying to hit a target number in an armor class, and even if you were, you'd still just tack it down to kind of meet what you're using in your core mechanics. But as far as that goes, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and you guys want to see more of what I'm actually going to be putting into this game that I'm trying to make. The next video is going to be like inspirations I pull from world building, whether it be from video games or books, which I do not read if there's no pictures in it. But yeah, see you guys next time.